seeing something no one else could see. Tell me what it means when your faith is falling beneath your knees and you can't breathe. Everything you see reminds you of what you're not or something you won't be. You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to...
What is the crack, everyone? Top 5 mistakes that I see made by powerlifters all the time. These are mistakes that I've seen a lot of my team and clients come to me dealing with in the past. These are mistakes that I see people make all the time in the gym. And the thing is here, these aren't mistakes that are only apparent for beginners. These aren't mistakes that I only see kind of novice lifters making. To be honest, these are mistakes that I see more so at the intermediate level when you're kind of that 2, 3, 4 year in mark. You know, as a beginner in powerlifting, you know, you're going to make quick progress, okay? Just due to being specific with a new skill, your body's going to take it up, you're going to get stronger, you're going to get them newbie gains, and everyone gets them. However, the mistakes you make, even during that time frame, but more so as you get 1, 2, 3, 4 years in, these mistakes are what's compounding to, you know, plateaus later on in training a couple of years in, maybe pain, injury, and just kind of even falling out of love with the sport just because you haven't got the proper foundation. So yeah, these are mistakes that I find that are very, very apparent. And you know, there's a ton of mistakes that I see made in the industry, and especially in powerlifting, from a coaching standpoint, from a technique standpoint, from a mindset standpoint, whatever it might be. But I'm going to narrow it down to the top 5 that I feel are the most detrimental to lifters and also the most common. So yeah, let's get stuck into this. Mistake number 1 is breathing and bracing. Now we're going to talk about breathing and bracing very specific to squat and deadlift, okay? So squat and deadlift require a similar bracing pattern than bench press, but that is for a whole new video. I actually have a video lined up on bench press, breathing and bracing to come in a couple of weeks' time on YouTube, because it's a complex topic as well and something that's very interesting. So we're going to be talking more about the squat and the deadlift here. So we're going to be talking about the squat and the deadlift, how we can breathe and brace, you know, more efficiently. How can we get more intra-abdominal pressure? And what we're going to look at is 2 key variables to breathing and bracing. And it's your exhale and your inhale. A lot of people just assume that breathing and bracing on the squat is just a big open mouth breath, or on deadlift, and that's it. Okay. So if anything, to be honest, a majority of people who are think they're bracing with just a big breath of air in, the likelihood is you're creating less pressure in your system as a whole because you're just creating more space. So a big inhale, all a big inhale does is just create space in my abdomen, creates space in my chest. More space equals less pressure. So it's actually pretty counterproductive. So how we, you know, get around this, how we fix this is, one way I teach bracing to all my guys at VICI is we start with an exhale first. We start with a couple of mini exhales. So if, for example, if we're on a squat and when we're on a deadlift, when we take these exhales is obviously very different. But before we actually take our inhale in and we're ready to brace, what I reinforce to all my clients is that, right, get yourself 3 to 4 mini exhales. They don't have to be big exhales like that. Just wee mini exhales through like pursed lips. You know, we're looking to get air out of our abdomen. We're looking to create less space there. So even if you do that right now, right, and get a couple of wee mini exhales, like, you will find a couple of things. You'll find, number 1, air is obviously leaving your stomach or your diaphragm. So you're going to find that there's less space down here. And the second thing you're going to feel is that you're going to feel your obliques and your abs turn on. So that's going to help you reinforce that stacked position of the rib cage. We all want that ribs down, kind of stacked position to have a good brace. So having the abs on and the obliques on help us pull into that position. So it's very, very important that we start with that exhale. When we're on a squat, we might get that exhale when we're fully walked out, we're in position, we're just about to take that breath in. That's when we'd start to get our wee mini exhales going and create that tension. When you're on a deadlift, you'll obviously do that just before you take your inhale, so whether you're at the top or the bottom. But it doesn't matter when you're taking it, the main thing is that you are. So get 3 to 4 mini exhales. You'll create that smaller, tighter space. Your ribs will be down, your abs will be on. And now what we want to do is we want to breathe and take an inhale into that smaller position. That's what's going to create more pressure in your core. So as you've created that smaller space with the exhales, what you want to think about is keeping that smaller space, not just losing it and letting loose. Keep it tight and take a smart inhale into that position. And a little bonus point on this is to start your inhales with nasal breathing. Nasal breathing is really good. It's going to enable us to pretty much direct our air into our stomach, nice and low down, as opposed to into our chest high up. If we take a big, deep, open mouth breath, a lot of times we're going to see our chest rise, that air is going to come very high up in the chest. We're not going to be breathing down into our belt or into that position of kind of smaller space that we've created. Whereas if we take a inhale with our nose, that air is naturally going to go down into that position. Now, it doesn't mean that the entire inhale has to be through the nose. I like to coach like a bit of both. So sometimes I'll tell a lifter to start the inhale with the nose and finish it with the mouth to get a little bit of extra air in. So it would look like, and then brace down on that position and keep that tightness. So yeah, that is mistake number one. It is breathing and bracing. Start with your exhale, get that tighter space, get the abs and the obliques on, reinforce that stacked rib cage position, then inhale into that valuable position. Job's a good one. Mistake number two, accessories. Just really poor selection of accessories in programming, real kind of no intent behind them. And what this is leaving is a lot of gaps in your ability, in your range of motion, in the stability at joints, in your ability to handle workload, in just basically how far you can take your powerlifting. The accessories are very, very important. What I want you to view accessories as is, yes, they build muscle, but they're also your mobility exercises. They're your stability exercises. They're what keep you pain-free long term. The thing is as well, as a powerlifter, you're generally going to be getting stronger. As you get stronger and as you get bigger, your mobility exercises that you did at the start of training, they're probably not going to work as well as they did at the start of training. The bigger and the stronger, more resilient you get your body, you need, these accessories and exercises to be, you need basically mobility exercises that are going to be a little bit more strenuous to the body, and that's what's going to continue to make change. So if you're a couple of years in, you're finding your mobility sucks and, all these bodyweight warm-up drills that you're doing aren't actually, ticking the boxes, it's probably more a reason to do with your accessories and not treating them and respecting them enough. So when it comes to accessory selection, I have a couple of different lenses that I view accessories in. Number one is obviously hypertrophy. We want to be choosing exercises that they're going to help us grow. We're going to get bigger, okay? Everybody wants to get bigger and improve our physique. So that is number one. But we want to look through it on a couple of different lenses. The second lens I look at is, can we improve any specific weaknesses or lack of kind of mobility in certain areas? And make sure that these accessories are actually directly targeting that. So for example, if I have someone that lacks hip flexion or internal rotation, or the bottom of a squat, they get like that kind of soreness, and then subsequently they don't have internal rotation and hip flexion, when I test that, I might program some loaded front foot elevated split squats, because that's taking an accessory. It's going to grow our quads as a primary kind of exercise, but we've also getting that secondary benefit of we're loading into hip flexion and internal rotation. We're going to be training this range of motion that this lifter doesn't have, and then that transfer effect, or just the amount of range of motion and the ability that you have on the squat, is going to improve as a byproduct of that. So we need to be choosing accessories for more than just one benefit, for more than just muscle growth. We need to be looking at them as your mobility exercises. We need to be looking at them as exercises that's going to keep you pain-free long term. And most importantly, they're very specific to you. You need accessories that are targeting your own weaknesses. Anyone that comes on at VICI, we do a thorough assessment protocol. You know the drill. We look at the shoulder, hip and spine, the three main areas that a powerlifter that we need to be looking at in terms of range of motion to effectively squat, bench and deadlift. Okay. And based on that assessment and based on the results, then I start to think, right, what accessories is actually going to work for this person? So if someone lacks external rotation at the shoulder and, they're getting pain or discomfort at the bottom of a bench press, I might look at, doing a single arm supinated lat pull down, which is going to put them into an eccentrically loaded, externally rotated position. It's going to give them that little bit of range of motion here. And then I might put them into some bodyweight dips, which is going to improve shoulder extension, basically your humerus upper arm bone coming down past your body. And we're training and strengthening these ranges in isolation so that, again, we can feel better in compound. So if someone struggles on bench press at the very bottom, they're getting pain in the shoulder, this kind of bottom portion, it's probably a sign that their shoulder extension is poor. Maybe they're lacking external rotation. Let's have a look at this. Let's see if we can bring this up in our accessories. And that is usually the big missing link. A lot of people go straight to programming. A lot of people go straight to technique, when usually it's neither of those. Those are the sexy things that you want it to be. But realistically, it's just inefficient programming, not training the right muscle groups, redundant programming as well, so you're not actually training multiple ranges of motion. With our accessories, we want to be training the gaps that SBD does not train, and there's quite a lot of them. So yeah, accessory movements is definitely the big one. It's making sure you're getting bigger, making sure you're, I hate the word, but bulletproofing yourself, essentially. I hate that word, we can't do that, but it's the only thing that comes to mind right now. So yeah, accessory selection, mistake number 2, just isn't efficient. Mistake number 3 is not treating your externals seriously enough, like not recovering, just not putting any effort into anything else outside the gym. You know, you're training like an athlete 3, 4, 5 times per week. You're taking that really, really seriously, but you're just living like a toddler or living like someone in like college at Freshers Week or something like that there. You're not taking your recovery seriously. That's as simple as that. When we look at recovery, we need to be ticking all the boxes outside the gym to get the most out of your training. You can only train as hard as you recover. That is a stereotypical saying, but it is so true. Your potential in the gym is dictated by what we do outside and how well we come prepped to sessions. So the main things we kind of look at here is nutrition, sleep, stress management, and daily activity levels. So with our nutrition, are we actually putting the effort in to make sure we're getting enough food, the right amount, quantity of calories every single day? Are we eating, quality foods and not just eating a load of shit? And are we putting priority into our pre-workout meal, essentially? Like, are we fueling up for sessions as well as we can be? If your nutrition is just all over the place, you don't know what you're doing, you're eating different foods before different sessions. You know, the thing with powerlifting and nutrition is we want predictability. Okay, and what I mean by that is we want the same pre-workout meal. You know, like if you take the same pre-workout meal at the same time, every session, you're creating predictability. And what this does, it allows you, and it allows me as a coach to troubleshoot a lot more effectively when things go wrong and there's a lot of moving parts. And yes, pre-workout nutrition can actually be a part of like plateaus and can actually be a part of poor session performance, where again, people look at the sexy things, they want to look at programming, they want to look at, technique, whereas probably it's how you're presenting yourself for a session. So nutrition is definitely a big one. The second thing is sleep. Now, sleep is very individual, okay? It's stereotypical to say you need 8 hours or you need 9 hours of sleep. It's not necessarily the case. Of course, 8-ish hours of sleep per night is the recommended, amount of sleep that you want to be getting to optimize everything. But there's a lot of very strong, elite, world-class powerlifters out there that sleep 5, 6, 7 hours per night, and they do pretty well. But the thing with sleep that we want to do here is find your norm, okay? Like, we want to normalize things and have things, again, predictable and repeatable. If you get 5 to 6 hours sleep every night because of work and priorities, well, that's what you get. But as long as we maintain this every single time, we know what we're dealing with. We know you're normal. Like, that is the most important part. But when it comes to sleep, like, are you putting the effort into, number one, getting enough of it and making sure the quality is good? Are you eating too close to bed, like bedtime? Are you putting effort into, making sure that you're off screens before going to bed? You're not watching TV right up before you go to bed. You're not staying out late at night. Things like this here is just simple wee things that, you just have to prioritize. So sleep would be the second thing. The third thing is stress management. Stress management is absolutely huge, like massive. Essentially, stress in the body is all stress in the body. If you're really, really stressed at home, the way we can look at this is you're never recovering. You train and you put your body through stress in the gym. When you come out of the gym, your body needs to be in. So basically, from a nervous system standpoint, when we're training, we're in what's called the fight or flight. We're in that sympathetic nervous system, okay? In this sympathetic nervous system, this is when we will find like kind of raises in pulse, raises in blood pressure. We're going to find that we're a lot more kind of on edge in terms of just how you feel. Adrenaline will be sky high. Our digestion cuts off. We don't digest food in this state. So that's our kind of fight or flight. That's when we're really, we're lifting weights. We're ready to go. Now the opposite of that is our parasympathetic nervous system, or the way I like to call it is like this is your rest and digest state. This is when we start to see blood pressure lowering, our pulse lowering. We're not going to be feeling as on edge. Our body is going to release natural digestive enzymes to aid in digestion and so on. And if you're chronically stressed outside the gym, you're not doing anything about it, you're essentially never getting into that parasympathetic nervous system. You're essentially never recovering. Okay, you might be you are recovering to a degree, but you're not recovering to, the full extent to what you could be, and your training is definitely taking a hit from that. So stress management, a couple of strategies that I always recommend is every single week you should have a couple of hours or even one day, right, where you are doing something that just helps you switch off, something you love, right? Something just so, it could be something so easy. It could be going to the cinema. It could be watching something comedy. It could be, for some people going on a hike. It could be going swimming. It could be whatever it might be. This is your escape. It's not mine. It's yours. Okay. So we've got to try your best every week to get these hours in for yourself where you're just switching off. You're doing things for you. You're having fun. You're laughing. You're switching off. That's a stress management strategy. And that's one thing I do recommend. A lot of people try and implement into their week just to help them switch off. So stress management definitely being number 3. And then the 4th thing is daily activity. We just got to be moving. Low intensity movement is where recovery happens. Step counts and low intensity steady state cardio are 2 of the best things that you can do for recovery. So the low intensity steady state cardio, let's be serious. None of you guys are probably doing cardio right now. And cardio is where we recover. Like the health of the recovery is based on your cardiovascular and respiratory system. Like that is what recovers you. Okay, that's what elicits recovery. So if we aren't training the cardiovascular and respiratory system, we're not increasing our capabilities for recovery. So you have to be actually doing some form of cardio per week to get stronger heart and lungs so that they can do the job to recover you. And we also want low intensity steady state. We're not looking high intensity interval training or anything like that because it's just too demanding, it's too intense, it interferes with powerlifting style training. But low intensity steady state, 1 to 2 times per week, maybe 3 depending on who you are or what you're doing, should be in your weekly split 100%. The second caveat to this now is steps. So we're looking at step count. 10k is the magic number apparently that the industry has come up with over the last couple of years. It's a good ballpark to aim for, but essentially what we want is anywhere between that 7 to kind of 12k step mark is going to be fine. The big thing that I reinforce to people, a couple of things, is number 1, we want to be gradually increasing steps. So if you're coming from like 3k or 4k, I don't want you going to 10. Okay, you're going to cripple yourself. I want you just adding 1,000 here and there, build yourself up. And I do 7.5k steps a day, and that's me completely fine. I recover well. I feel a big part of step count and where people get let down is the frequency of their steps as opposed to the quantity. And what I mean by this is the frequency of your movement, i.e. getting steps in the morning, getting some steps in the afternoon, getting some in the evening, getting some before you go to bed. Like the frequency of you moving throughout your day is so much more important than just hitting an arbitrary number. So that's another thing to remember for step count. Nail your recovery, nail those externals, start living like an athlete as opposed to just training like one. Mistake number 4 is you're just doing way too much, way too soon. This mistake is killing a ton of kind of intermediate lifters, those 2, 3, 4 years in lifters who feel that they need to be training like advanced athletes, people who've maybe trained 5, 7, 10 plus years. And here's the reality, it does not matter who your dad is, it doesn't matter how strong you are, you still have the volume demands as a beginner if you're in your first 1, 2 or 3 competitions. Most people jump the gun and just get stuck into way too much training volume, way too much training stress. They start doing all these crazy variations when they haven't even learned how to comp SBD initially. And as time goes on, it just leads to a lot of problems like pain, injury, training plateaus, confusion most importantly, and a lack of love for the sport. I see it all the time. People going from A to Z. What I always tell people is get the most out of the least. Your minimum effective dose is a lot less than what you actually think it is. You think you need a lot more to progress than what you actually do. And the reality is that a lot of people will actually progress by just doing more quality work as opposed to quantity. And this is where a lot of people get skewed. And also this is where good coaching comes in. And subsequently, there's just not a lot of that out there. So people are forced to think they need to be doing more training or adding in more sets or doing more intensity to get stronger. Whereas if they really delved in on quality and what really matters and even cutting volume in half, which I've done to a lot of people coming on board at VICI, they've gotten a lot stronger and broken plateaus within 3 months. So the goal is to find your minimum effective dose. Find a dose of training that you're responding well to, you can recover from and get stronger to. And essentially only add training stress when you need to. When we look at training stress, we can look at training frequency, training volume, and training intensity. Okay, these are 3 things that we're going to be adding to over the course. Training volume and training intensity are a lot less potent than training frequency when it comes to adding it into a program. Adding training frequency, i.e. squatting 3 times a week over 2 times a week or benching 4 over 3, is a very potent way of adding training stress, and a lot of intermediates are running into a lot of problems because they're doing this way too soon. Most of you out there will probably react really well to 2 squats a week, 2 to 3 bench press, and 1 deadlift, maybe 2 if the secondary was a very light one. And I find that this is 100% the gold standard for anyone who's been training under 5 years. From here we can look at, right, what are we actually doing in these sessions to get better? How are they structured? What's your progression scheme? What form of periodization are you using? How are you recovering? What's your accessory selection like? Like, there's so much things that you can delve into from a quality standpoint before you start looking at quantity to actually improve. And therefore, you lower the risk of you running into all the problems that I've talked about, but you also increase the runway of progression, or how long you can actually withstand training for. So stop thinking that you need to be training like someone who's been in the sport for 10 plus years. Dial it back, right back to the basics. Get the quality from the get-go. Have a good coach if you don't, because that is 100% the make or break. And then you just build from there. But start low and build it tall. The 5th mistake that I see made a lot, like way too often, and I actually call a lot of my own guys out on this as well sometimes, it is sticking to your training schedule. Again, bringing me back to the key words of repeatability and predictability. So what I mean by this and sticking to a training schedule, at least for me and a lot of other really good coaches, when we design training programs, we design them with a lot of intent. We design them with a lot of with primary days, secondary days, tertiary days. And the reason behind these is we look at where we're allocating stress. We look at which parts of the week are going to be more fatiguing, which parts of the week are we going to be recovering in, and subsequently which sessions are you going to be feeling fresh in to elicit higher performance. And we do this, I do this very intentionally. I do this intentionally for every single client to make sure that their training split is set up around obviously their own availability, but where we put certain squats, where we put certain heavier accessories like leg press, dips, these kind of heavier, more fatiguing exercises, like where they're positioned in the week, and why they're in day 1 or why they're in day 2 and why we train on these specific days is hugely important, because it creates predictability and repeatability, and it allows us to diagnose problems a lot easier as well, because we know exactly what's going on. The more routine something is, the easier and faster it is to fix problems when they actually arise. So the mistake that I see people make is they carry, they'll do a different day of training when they're meant to do it a certain day. It's like, I can't do day 1, I'm going to do day 2 instead. I'm pulling it forward, and then I'm pulling it back the next week, and then it's a wee bit all over the place. And what we want to remember here is that each day elicits a certain amount of fatigue, and it's going to impact the following day based on how that went. And week to week, we're getting no predictability and repeatability in the program and response, because you're pulling days left, right, and center. And even from an accessory standpoint, if I wasn't feeling leg press today, I'm going to do it on, in the next session. But you doing that in your next session is going to possibly impact the session that was after that negatively, which might be your primary day, which I didn't want a big leg press before. And therefore, we're in the gym and we're wondering why your primary day is sucking a lot more. And it's because, we took that stress from day, if your primary day squat was on day 3, and we had like a big heavy leg press on day number 1, but we brought that leg press to day 2, we're bringing that closer to the primary squat day. That's going to leak into this, and it's going to cause some issues with performance. So it's very important that you stick to your training split, you keep things where they're meant to be. And if it doesn't work, that's where you just communicate with the coach, or you sort things out with the program for like a long-term fix. We want things to be repeatable. Things should look identical pretty much week to week, so that you can control your own rate of performance. You can diagnose problems a lot easier, and get through barriers when they present themselves. So yeah, stick to the program. And if there are reasons where you are, frequently week to week being like, I can't do this on a certain day because I feel like X, Y, or Z, like I feel too fatigued, or I can't do leg press today because my joints are screaming, or this, that, and the other, like I usually carry things into day 2. If these are things that you're constantly seeing, that's probably more reason to actually change your program in the first place. Change your program to meet the demands that you're at. So if you're finding that like day 1, you have squats and leg press, but you can't leg press after the squat because your knees are fried. So you usually bring that leg press to day 2. Instead of just doing that on your own, like bring it to your coach, or look at the program and actually start to move things about. Make sure things are sitting where they should be. while still following those rules that the program was initially built around, with the primary, tertiary and secondary days, so that every day is still getting what it needs. So yeah, that is my top 5 mistakes that I see made all the time. And they're not bad to be making these mistakes. It's normal. It is completely normal to make these mistakes. I've made them, still do. I coach a lot of people that made them prior, still do. There's nothing wrong. The main thing is we have to be aware of these mistakes. We have to be aware of, we have to be aware to catch them if we're making them, but we also have to be aware of how we fix them as well, and actually get through them. So there's nothing wrong with going through these as long as you nip it in the bud and actually do something about them. So yeah, top 5 mistakes that I see made pretty frequently. So I hope you guys enjoyed that video. That is my first YouTube video back in a very long time, but it's been on my radar for quite some time to get back into YouTube, because it's just a great platform, especially for someone like me who likes to absolutely ramble about everything that I talk about. Instagram, TikTok and stuff, it's not built around long form content and proper educational based content, stuff where you can really go all in. So I'm going to be coming back to YouTube 1 to 2 times per month, and just talk about, just make complex topics very simple for all you guys to follow and take from, and just help you all get better, smash PRs, get into killer shape, get out of pain. It's what we do. So yeah, anything like that will be all covered throughout this channel. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this first video back. Keep your eyes peeled for the next one. Drop it a wee like, send this to someone that you can see is making these mistakes, and I hope you enjoyed.
Growing up, I had a dream, something no one else could see. Tell me what it means when your faith is falling beneath your knees and you can't breathe. Everything you see reminds you of what you're not, or something you won't be. You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to